Hey everyone, welcome to TechStrong TV. Today's Tuesday, July 28th, and thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed yesterday's show. It was certainly chock full of some good interviews, news, information, and I hope Tuesday today finds you well, working, contributing, and getting by with all we're doing, what's going on in the world. But what's going on in the world is not as important for us right now as what's going on in the world of cloud native, DevOps, cybersecurity, digital transformation, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. I've got 3 interviews that I want to show you, and then we have some interviews that Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, has done, as well as Mitchell Ashley, CEO, founder of Accelerated Strategies Group. Let me give you a quick preview, though, of what we have in store for you today. Our first interview this morning features someone was really my pleasure the first time I have interviewed him. Phil T. is one of the co-founders, CEO at Moogsoft. Moogsoft, of course, has been around a long time. They are a leader in what is now called AI Ops. Some people are starting to put observability as a name around it. We used to call it APM as well. No matter what you call it, don't call Moogsoft late for dinner, though, because they have been a leader in the global 2000 market for APM, AI Ops observability. Phil clues us in that they've recently come out now with a new product called Moogsoft Express that is aimed at organizations below the Global 2000. Of course, they still have their Moogsoft Enterprise for Global 2000 type companies, and so they offer both, and they're customized for different scale. Phil also talks to us about the state of the market, though, and what's been happening around COVID and stuff like that. It's a great interview. I think you'll enjoy it. So that's Phil T., CEO of Moogsoft. After that, we have another co-founder, a CTO, Adam Kami. And Adam is with, I think it's Adam Carmi, excuse me. And Adam is with Applitools. Applitools, of course, is a leader in testing, automated testing, especially around visual automated testing. And what's really interesting is, you get people on an interview and they get a chance to talk, and you find out that things you didn't think you were going to find out. In this case, Adam really gives us a terrific behind-the-scenes view of not only his own career, but kind of the forces at play, the circumstances around the very forming of Applitools, and why. What was the mission? Every entrepreneur thinks in some way they're going to change the world with what they're doing. And in Applitools' case, it's true. But Adam really gives us that insight that you often don't hear, and now you will today. He also talks about some of the recent new features, really. And if you look at what they're doing, it's in line with Adam's original vision. So it's good to see that vision from years ago still playing out right up till today and beyond. So good interview there with Adam Carmi, CTO, co-founder at Applitools. After that, I want to introduce a new company to you, and it's called Kubernetes. And we talk with Mike Hogan, their CEO. Kubernetes is a new player in the cloud-native container security space. And of course, this is a space with several strong contenders, both startups and public entities. But Mike's going to tell us why Kubernetes is different and why no one is kind of doing what they're doing within the general space of container security cloud native. So it'll be interesting for you to listen to. I think Mike has a good handle on it. After that, we'll be back with our Something Old segment for today. Once again, I'm pulling it out of TechStrong Con, and we are happy to present Pavlo Baron, who is with Instana. He's the CTO at Instana, and he's going to talk around observability and applying it at scale, right, to the enterprise. And this whole observability has become a tremendous buzzword recently, right? Everyone's talking about observability and what it means and why you need it and how you can obtain it. So good stuff there from Pavlo. I'll be back after that, of course, for our regular news in terms of what's happening in the media ops neighborhood. And then we'll head things over to Charlene. Charlene actually has a interview she did over at RSA conference this past February, and it's with Jeff Martin of WhiteSource. And Jeff is going to explain how automation is a tool to enable humans to do better at their jobs, not to replace humans. And that's something we should remember. Our friend Bob Resselman, Bob, over at Accelerated Strategies Group, has a great book, a collection of essays he's done around that subject of automation and jobs. And if you like what Jeff has to say, check out Bob's book as well over on Accelerated Strategies Group. After that, Charlene will be giving us a webinar preview for, I think we have maybe 4 more webinars this week, 4 or 5 more webinars this week on MediaOps on various subjects Charlene will tell us about. And then I'll be back to introduce you all to Mitch. Mitch has a good analyst corner, great commentary and video. And after Mitchell, I'll be back to wrap things up. Just clocking in at just a bit over 2 hours today. I think we've got a great show. Stay tuned. We've got 2 hours of great entertainment and information and learning for you. But we're going to take a quick break right now for a commercial, and I'll be right back. So Mooksoft has been a player in the first APM, AI Ops, observability space for as long as we've been doing DevOps.com. And but I never had the opportunity to meet with Phil T, their co-founder, CEO. I had a chance to catch up with Phil finally. Here's an interview I did with him. And the real news in this interview is around a new Mooksoft Express product that Mooksoft's come out with that is aimed below the Global 2000. Right, traditionally, Mooksoft has been an enterprise play for Global 2000s. So Phil explains to us why they came out with this new product as well. And we talk more. We talk about observability, AI ops, and that whole market, COVID, and what's happening, remote working. It's a great interview. Let's now go to Phil T, CEO, Mooksoft.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another segment here at TechStrong TV. I'm really happy to be joined by a first-time guest here on TechStrong, Phil T, who's the CEO, of Mooksoft. Hey Phil, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hey, it's great to be along, Alan, and I'm sorry it's my first time, but I'm excited to do it.
Well, hopefully it won't be your last, and that's what's more important. Phil, You're coming at us today from out on the West Coast, Marin County, I believe, and glad to see you're well and healthy out there and enjoying. Mooksoft is a company, Phil, that I think most of our audience, on the DevOps side of things and SRE, they're familiar. Mooksoft is not a new company in the space. It's actually they're pretty mature in a pretty immature space, if you will. Right, the space itself is still growing into itself, but Mooksoft has certainly been a company that has helped define it. But there's probably some folks out here who are not familiar with Mooksoft. So why don't we start there and try to bring them up to speed?
Yeah, absolutely, and you're quite right. It's we sort of are living in the AI ops and more recently AI ops observability space. This kind of sort of truism that people say that, today's overnight success has been 10 years in the making.
Right.
And, we're a company that, we're not founded last year. We've been around for 7 or 8 years now. And what we've been doing is patiently building up this position in AI ops. And the reason why it's important to say patient is because I think one of the things that will come out over the next year or two are, which of those companies that are genuinely delivering something different that is AI ops, and which of those companies that are, frankly, kind of just, AI ops washing their brand to kind of create a sense of freshness. And the scary thing is about what we've built at Moogsoft is the degree to which we've had to create a lot of pioneering intellectual property. We've filed 50 patents. 30 of those have been granted. We've been building ahead of steam with our large enterprise customers, well over 150 now in production. Where what we've been showing people is that a required change in how you think about operations, if you want to take full advantage of cloud, hybrid cloud, DevOps, SRE, is a shift away from the old school rules-based way of monitoring and detecting failures that you need to remediate to something which is much more AI-driven, machine learning-driven. And the reason for that requirement is because all of the modern compute stack, it moves around a lot more. There's a lot more of it. It's a lot more complicated than maybe the stuff that I was born into this industry. I mean, I go all the way back to fixed line networks and IBM mainframes everywhere, and co-founding Micromuse. The world was a lot simpler back then. Today, it is a hell of a lot faster paced, and you need just to up your game from a technology perspective to be able to get your digital services online and keep them online. And if you punch the bruise is an old phrase from some of the political discourse in the UK about how you sort of repeat your message. But if anything, what we're all living through, and it's great to talk to somebody on the other side of the coast. We're all living with this this pandemic that's been wreaking havoc worldwide. We're remote working. Most of our customers are remote working. And if you're going to do that, you also need to have, tools that are able to deal with that. So Moogsoft is, in summary, a pioneer in AIOps. We sort of define the space. We've led the space. We've generated tons of innovative IP to address the space. And, I'm looking forward to what I think are going to be probably 5 exciting years of my career in front of us.
Excellent. Just a couple of comments on your comment on your thoughts. First of all, you're right. I think with AI ops, we saw this when the cloud first came out, right? I was in the security space back then, and all of a sudden people started saying, "Oh, we got to do cloud security," right? And that became a thing, and many of the security vendors. No problem. We have cloud security. We're going to take our security that we always did over here and just put it up over here, right? And we, in the industry, we used to call that cloud washing, right? They were trying to like money laundering, right? They were taking their security that was not designed for the cloud and forcing it on the cloud, and it was a square peg in a round hole, right? And we didn't really start having cloud security until we had cloud native security, right? Security in the cloud, by the cloud, for the cloud. I think we see a similar thing with AI ops, right?
Absolutely.
People are trying to, right? They're forcing the ML and AI into the ops, or what was, application management.
I think it's worse. I think it's worse than that. I think they're not even forcing any AI or ML into it. I mean, technically speaking, a rule. So, and let's just talk about what a rule is. So, in the context of Moogsoft's world, or the service assurance fault management world, a rule is if I get A and B, conclude that I've got problem C. Right. So you absolutely have to have A, and you absolutely have to have B before you go conclude, some remedial action or declare a root cause C. Now, technically speaking, that's an expert system. And technically speaking, an expert system lives inside of the umbrella of artificial intelligence and machine learning. But I think when people say AI ops, they're not thinking about expert systems, because the problem with this A and B equals C is your A is forever changing. You don't know what your A's are, and you don't know what your B's are. So how can you build a rule that matches A and B to get C? And even if you could, there's even well understood theoretical computer science that tells you can't build a complete set of rules that will give you full coverage. And I think that's one of the reasons why, when we go into our customers or prospects, they get a kind of a shock because we show them much more than what they've ever seen before. We'll be showing them instances they weren't even aware of going on and showing them stuff that, we get asked the whole time, are you doing predictive? And it's like, no, we're not doing predictive because nobody can tell the future. All we're doing is we're showing you your stuff as it happens, as opposed to 12 hours later when it's happened. And it's kind of interesting. So I think a lot of the old legacy vendors that are, doing A and B, therefore C, are basically saying, hey, what's new? We're an expert system. It's the same thing. It's still, Skynet. We're gonna take our old 30-year-old product and we'll call it AIOps because we might sell a license or two more. It's kind of, I find it a little bit, right at the beginning of MoveSoft, we recorded this cheesy video, my co-founder and I, down on the rock in Elephant Rock in Tiburon. Yeah, okay. Silver, yeah. And this is where I was kind of saying, I held the mobile phone and I said something like, and this will give you an idea of inflation. In my hand is $600 worth of, thousands of patents, thousands of years of research, hundreds of PhDs. You walk into an Apple store, or for that matter, if it's Android, you walk into any store and buy it. $600 buys you all of that innovation. $1 million with one of the acronym companies buys you what was cool in 1990.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
I was cool in 1990.
Yeah. I hear you. And I often think about that, right? I remember when they first announced the iPhone, and I was using a Windows phone, and I had a good friend of mine, my friend Andrew Greeley. He was at Deutsche Bank, but he was from Australia, and he kept telling me, he says, Shimmy, it's all about the apps. And I was like, what apps, Andrew? There are no apps. No, there's going to be 10,000 apps. And he was probably right. And but that being said, you're right. And one other thing, and then I want to move on to what's happening at MoveSoft, Phil, is that when you get these people who, let's call them a little disingenuous or a little, they're selling a little marketing snake oil around AI ops and around ML and stuff. It does everyone no good, right? Because it brings the whole industry down to, that's just more marketing speak, or that's just more nonsense, right? And as you said, we might have all these names for it and everything, but it's still 1990. And it's what I was, doing before there was something called AI ops, because it really hasn't changed. Anyway, let's take it for a given that MoveSoft is part of this new breed of companies that are moving the needle, that are advancing the art of AI ops and what's happening. The fact of the matter is, as you said, you've been around 7 or 8, maybe 9 years now, and you guys really kind of made your chops in the Fortune, call it Global 2000, right? Fortune 1000, Global 2000, large enterprise market. And, that's a market that a lot of companies shoot for, right? And to do so, you need real enterprise scalability, enterprise features, and so forth. But sometimes it's easier to scale up from a mid-market or a mid-enterprise to a large enterprise than it is to scale down, right? To dumb down I don't want to use the word dumb down, but to scale down your product to a smaller organization. And that's some news that you guys have recently announced, right? With a new version of MoveSoft.
That's right. I mean, what we saw increasingly, even in the Fortune 2000, was that the use case that our product was being sort of pointed out was SRE DevOps. We have, in a large number of customers now, thousands of application developers logging into the product. And the reason why they're interested in it is, precisely this business of, not frankly having to work too hard in terms of setup, to be able to get visibility into what might be threatening the availability of the app that they're responsible for. So what we did was we put in quite a bit of effort. We started this a couple of years back to build a multi-tenant SaaS entry level version of the AIOps product, really targeting observability with AIOps and a customer that might be quite a bit smaller. So instead of the Fortune 2000, we sometimes talk about the global 10K or the Fortune 10K. These are the $100 million revenue businesses, that might have, dozens of servers rather than hundreds of thousands of servers, and dozens of apps that they care about rather than thousands of apps that they care about. And so we wanted something that was self-serve. We wanted something that was self-contained. So we added the capability to do metrics as well as events, logs, traces into the AIOps suite. And we took, some of the best of the AI algorithms that we deploy at very large scale, and we introduced them into this platform. So that right now, if you're a single app owner, if you have that sort of ubiquitous dating app in the cloud startup, you can download and use for a very small amount of money, and in fact even free, a version of AIOps, which in one place will give you observability metrics, it will give you events, it will give you correlation, it will give you incident management, and through integration into tools like PagerDuty, Jira, and so on and so forth, it'll give you the full end-to-end one-stop shop view of the availability of your app. Now, we've been incubating that for a little while. It's been in open beta really for the first half of this year, and there's about 100 users in the open beta. What we decided to do was to start to progressively open that up to GA. We had a launch event on June 24th. There's going to be a periodic series of additional announcements, new product features, because it's fully CI/CD. These don't have to be separate launches. It's kind of, we upgrade our entire customer base, touch of a button overnight. And, by the end of this year, what you'll see is, hopefully a growing coterie of SRE DevOps users really sort of adopting AIOps for the first time. And, let's be honest, if you think about the digital economy that we're in now, it's a patchwork. There are hundreds of thousands of relatively small companies providing, lots of very important services to many of us. A lot of these small companies end up growing big. And it's important that, as we're all sort of, disintermediated, i.e. remote, that availability is taken seriously by even the smallest of digital providers. Sorry, Alan, one anecdote, and I'll just quickly pause for breath. As you're even looking at the response to COVID, there's a lot of startups sort of trying to produce and fill the gaps of track and trace that governments aren't covering, with apps that can help you monitor your own personal risk. And it's, these are companies that, might be, a few dozen people. They need a tool to make sure that their app has the kind of the industrial level availability that people will expect.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing people have come to realize is that when you're living in a SaaS world, the SaaSy world, right? How big the organization producing that app is not necessarily indicative of the scalability that it needs by the audience who's using the app. And so that is the key. How many users does that app have becomes a key metric for what what your scalability needs to be, and what and everything that goes with that, of course. Fascinating stuff. Phil, we're running out of time, unfortunately. The time goes fast on us, and we spent time diving in. But I know the MOOCsoft Express, as you called it here, is available. There was another piece of news I thought that was out there.
No, that's really been the big thing.
Okay.
That we launched in June. And honestly, I'll get told off if I don't say this, but obviously on our website, you try it for free. Hit movesoft.com/express and come take a look and see what we have.
Excellent, man. Phil, thank you for joining us and putting us up to date here at MOOCsoft. Let's make sure you come back on real soon, though, and let's dive into more of what real AI apps needs to be and what we got to do here.
Would love to.
All righty. All right, until then, stay safe and stay well out there. Phil T, CEO of Moogsoft, here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back with our next guest.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to protect yourself and others from spreading the virus. Prevention and personal safety is key. Here are the top ways you can protect yourself and others. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. Practice social distancing and avoid high-risk potential people. If you are showing symptoms, stay at home. If you must go out, wear a face mask. Always cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue or use the inside of your elbow. Clean and sanitize frequently touched surfaces daily. Together, we can prevent this pandemic.
This next interview features CTO, co-founder Adam Carmi of Applitools. You know, as I said at the top of the show, sometimes you don't realize what you're going to get when you do these interviews. And this was one of those. Adam gave us a great behind-the-scenes look at why he co-founded Applitools, what the mission was then, what it is now. It hasn't really changed as much as you'd think. And what's their latest. So let's now go to our interview with Adam Carmi of Applitools.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another segment here at TechStrong TV. My guest on this segment is Adam Carmi. Adam is the co-founder CTO over at Applitools, a company that we featured on our show from time to time. They've one of the leaders in testing and automated testing, and I think one of the founders of Test Automation University, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, Adam, welcome to TechStrong TV. Though we've had Applitools on before, I don't think we've ever had you on. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, and it's great to be here.
Nice to have you. Yeah, as we were saying off camera, we get Gil, we get the CMO sometimes, but we haven't had the pleasure of having you on. Adam, and because Applitools has been featured before, and also because our audience is such a DevOps, centric audience, I think most of them know who Applitools is. They've heard of Applitools, but maybe there's some who haven't. So why don't we start off with that? Why don't you give us a little Applitools kind of background, if you don't mind?
So, my pleasure. So, Applitools provides a next-generation test automation platform that uses artificial intelligence to enable engineering teams to release high-quality web and mobile applications much faster than they can today and at a reduced cost. We rely on AI to emulate the human vision and validate entire application pages just by looking at them. And this saves the developer or tester the need to write and maintain thousands of lines of equivalent test code. And when the UI changes, we clearly show the before and after screenshots in our dashboard. So instead of having to fix the test code, the user just needs to accept the new screenshot to report a bug if the change was unexpected. Now, we go a step further even beyond that and use artificial intelligence to eliminate a lot of the repetitive maintenance tasks involved in test automation, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the third aspect that I think is interesting and also new to some of the audience is the fact that we also have the ultra-fast grid, which allows customers to execute their tests on hundreds of different combinations of browsers, devices, and operating systems, and to do that in orders of magnitudes faster and more stable compared to traditional device grids.
And that's a game changer kind of functionality there, right? First of all, I remember the first time I was introduced to Applitools, I'm going to say it was at a DevOps Enterprise Summit maybe 3 or 4 years ago, right? And this whole idea of sort of that human eye view of what we see on a screen, whether it's a mobile screen, a browser, what have you, and using that to test, is something working? Is it right? And whatever, to me seems so radical, so different than writing a script, right, that would test the code, that whether or not something displayed in a browser a certain way. The idea of, if we're testing what it looks like, we should test what it looks like, not what the code says it looks like, right? Was like an aha moment. But you're one of the co-founders, you're CTO at Applitools. Give us a little bit of your background, Adam.
Just in a minute, I want to elaborate just on to continue on what you said, and then I'll go back to that. I mean, when people think about this seeing thing, they immediately think about, oh, it just tests, how things look like, that the UI is beautiful. But functionality is what's important for me, and that's the most important thing. It's important to highlight the fact that this technology actually tests functionality as well. So it's everything that is exposed in the UI. Just to give you the most trivial example I can think of, if you have a calculator and a 1 + 1 turns out as a 3, we will let you know that there is a problem. We see it in the UI, right? It's not that the 3 is not beautiful. It's just not the 2 that we've been expecting, right? So it's UI testing, end-to-end, or component, or unit, whatever. If it's in the UI, the functionality is something that the user sees. Even if it's a PDF file that you extract or Excel sheet that shows you what's in the database, a user can look at it through a UI, we can validate it. Okay, so that's just an important clarification, if you may, for that thing.
Absolutely, and thanks for bringing it up. And that is, if I meant to say it was just what font you're using or something like that, or what color, that's not what I'm talking about. And I think you hit it on the head. There are things we could tell from just looking at something as a human that this is wrong. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, right? And
Exactly.
But it was never. No one ever explained it that way. No one ever, I think, thought of it that way, that I was aware in testing. So talk to us. How did this come about? You were there when it started, obviously. Where did this come from?
So a little bit about my background, which also answered this question. So before Applitools, I was VP of R&D, running engineering in a security startup. I've been there for 8 years. This is where, by the way, I met my two co-founders, Gil and Moshe. We work together. We're actually working together for over 15 years now. It's kind of a family right now, more than just business partners. And before that, I held different, research and development position at IBM, Microsoft. I was software architect at Intel. Computer science background. So when I was working at Applitools, just like at the previous company, it was a security product, and like every security product, it had a lot of logs and alerts and incidents and charts and all this good stuff that come with IT intense and security and alerting intense applications.
Yep.
And to make it worse, the product itself was localized to 6 different languages, and it was also rebranded, OEM'd by 5 different brands. So take this big UI and multiply it by 30.
Yeah,
and
I've been there.
Yeah, and now I had to, I was the VP of engineering. I was responsible not to have bugs in that. And I had about 30 testers, in addition to test automation, that only dealt with manually, going over the functionality and the UI and making sure that there are no issues there. And I'm talking about 2008, 2000, and these were the times, right? And at that time, it was a big achievement, we managed to reduce the release cycle from 1.5 years to 3 months, and that was like a huge,
That
huge
was.
change. That was the challenge at the times, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't
I've
get
been
it faster. The reason was that it would take an entire week for this army of testers to go through the entire 30 combinations of the UI. And when you have a single cycle that lasts a week, it takes at least a month to do the multiple cycles of fixes and testing.
We went through
This means that you have 2 months to develop, 1 month to test, 3-month cycle. I was stuck, right? That's where I was.
Had the same thing. I was also in cybersecurity. We made what they called a NAC, network access control, right? And we OEM'd with HP and Extreme and Novell. We had about 3 or 4 OEMs, and the same as you. We had to do the European languages, plus we had to do Scandinavian, because HP ProCurve was very big in Scandinavia. So we had to do like Swedish and stuff, which was very different. And that's what you just described. It got to the point, Adam, where the test cycles were longer than the development cycle. Right, the development we might finish off we were doing twice a year, cycle. We would do the development in maybe 2.5 months tops. It took 3.5 months more to finish the testing out. You can't, and that's assuming that the code was fairly good and there wasn't too much, right? That had to cycle back. The math doesn't work. It is, it becomes 1 and 1 equals 5. It doesn't work. But I feel that pain. I remember those days. Yeah. So what was the eureka moment for you where you said there's got to be a better way?
So the frustrating thing was that even after all this effort, my testers would still make mistakes. I would still have bugs in the UI because, they look at the same screens over and over and over and over, and then just do it by heart. They no longer even
desensitized.
They look, but they don't see. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the human nature. And especially if it's like small things, they're going through this, either exploratory testing or, just scripted tests, whatever. They just expect the end results that's written there, but there could be so many things broken along the way, and they just miss it, unfortunately. So I was at the time speaking with the vendors, that were then big, Microsoft and IBM and HP, and they would show me the tools, and I would tell them, look, this is my pain point. You have to help me figure it out. Build a feature, I'll buy it. Just give me a solution. And they told me this cannot be done. You have to use
famous last words.
Yeah, exactly. you have to use manual testing for that. And this gave me basically the idea. Now I've been writing code since I was 10 years old. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I probably do it just as passionately if no one would pay me a salary to do it anyway. And I just decided that I want to solve this problem because I'm a professional. And if I'm suffering from this problem, then probably the rest of the world is suffering from it as well. And that's what gave life to Applitools after Siphon was acquired.
That's a great story. So Adam, as I said, I'm in IT 30 years, and I've been very involved in venture-backed companies and venture companies. I've never met a founder, an entrepreneur, who didn't think that what they were doing, in some small way, some in a big way, but at least in some small way, was changing the world. And your story here is a perfect example of you saw this problem and we're going to change the world because they told you it couldn't be done, right? And here we are now, and it is done, and all of the great things Applitool has accomplished. I appreciate, you know what? no one from Applitools ever gave us the background like that. So thank you for that. I think our audience enjoys it. Let's now turn to some recent news that Applitools announced about a new release with some exciting new features. Can you share with our audience a little, maybe just the highlights and why you think people, why this is really important?
Yeah, sure. So today, we've released version 10.10 of the product, which has a lot of good stuff in it. But what I want to focus on here is our new capabilities around automated maintenance, automated test maintenance that I've hinted about before. Maybe it's good to start with what automated maintenance is. So if we consider like the normal situations for many teams, most teams that have mature automation in place spend anywhere between 40 and 70% of their time analyzing test results and fixing broken test code. Okay, and I know it from my own experience, from the many customers, that became our customers and found that life could be better, and from the many professionals that assist many companies to overcome this, this very common situation. Now, why is, and this is very problematic because if you spend so much time maintaining tests, you don't have time to develop new ones, and this creates a coverage gap that just grows and grows and grows, and eventually you don't get so much out of automation, and you have to rely a lot on manual testing. And this is something that is still very common. Even we see companies that have a very solid test automation team with like 15 guys there, which is quite a few, right? But you have hundreds of manual testers to compensate for whatever it is they don't do. Okay, even today in 2020, right?
Yep.
So this is the result of this, huge maintenance effort. And as I said before, another reason for that is that there are only 15 guys that can write code. Only these 15 guys can read the logs, can understand if the problem is in the product or in the code, and go in and fix the code, right? And you have so many other people that are also testers, also know the product, but cannot contribute to this maintenance effort. So the first way that we help here is the fact that you don't need to write that code anymore, and that you just need to look at screenshots, in our console, and decide if the difference is expected, not expected, accept, rejected, report. Everyone in the organization can participate in test maintenance, not just the few people who can code, and this opens up a huge bottleneck. But even there, within that area of maintaining those test results, there's a lot that can be done, and we actually use artificial intelligence to basically automate everything that we can automate, all the mundane work. And what's the gap? When it comes to artificial intelligence, it is, at least my opinion, that there are things that it will never be able to solve. One of them is, here's the change. Is it expected or not expected? Is it good enough or not good enough? The reason I think and believe with all my heart that it is impossible to solve this problem is just that I see every day my own engineers and employees that I really respect argue between themselves on these questions, right? This guy likes it, this guy thinks it's ugly. These are subjective matters, right? I might want this button to move to the other side. It might be intentional, but it could be unintentional, it could be a bug, right? So these are questions that the machine cannot answer. However, if a human, someone who knows the product, who knows, what was supposed to happen, knows that it's expected, and he just said, yes, it's expected, what I can do at this point is go over everywhere in the product when this change manifests, right? It could be different devices, different browsers, different form factors, maybe different pages of the application when the same thing happens. Let's say it's a website and I change something in the header. I could have 1,000 pages with the same change. I don't need for you to tell me 1,000 times, yes, I expected this, yes, I expected this, etc. So I can take basically your subjective feedback as a human being who knows the product that he's building and just let you provide that feedback and take away all the dirty work, okay?
Excellent.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say that's really important stuff. I mean, we're not going to have time to do it today, Adam, but I'll invite you back on because I think one of the discussions that needs to be had here is who is the tester? Do we have a cadre, a guild, if you will, of professional testers? How many of them, as you say, can code versus people who can't code? And, and do you need to code to be a tester in today's world? Well, that's part of what Applet Tools is helping with, right? And I think a discussion for another day, but an important thing in the testing industry.
Definitely, and I have a lot of opinions that I would love to share with you, and also what we do at Applet Tools as well. But getting back to my explanation about automated maintenance. So similarly, if let's say I have, I'm looking at the test results and I'm running tests at large scale, which you can definitely get to easily with Applet Tools. I'm running 10,000 tests. And now these tests stumbled upon 500 differences detected across your application. Okay, with a click of a button, the tool will analyze them and just show you the unique ones. Maybe there are just 2 differences that manifested 500 times, right? You only then need to look at 2 differences instead of 500, right?
It's a huge difference.
The type of things. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's a big difference.
To give a last example, these are all not new features. These are things that existed, but just to give a taste of the capabilities. Together with the screenshots that we take to analyze, we also upload the code for inside the browser, the DOM, CSS, all these artifacts. And we have algorithms that can actually tell you, given this difference in the UI, what were the code changes that happened that caused it, right? Yeah. And then I can save you a lot of time figuring out what happened, especially if someone from another team changed the CSS. I had no idea. He had no idea. I tried to do something else. It's affected my page. These things happen all the time. Maybe it's a bug that reproduces once in 100 runs. Here it is. It happened. It's there. The code is there. You can see exactly what happened in the code, right? So algorithms like that basically attack like every vector of the maintenance process and try to eliminate it. Okay?
It's good stuff.
Now, some of the stuff that we've added right now that we're pretty excited about really go a long way. So for example, we added the ability to automatically detect dynamic regions on the page. Okay, let's say that there is a date or an ad or something that changes all the time. Again, the machine cannot make the decision if it was expected to change or not, but it can tell you before you're starting to work hard, hey, I'm seeing that this area keeps changing. Maybe it's something that we need to ignore from now on. Okay, it asks you that, and if you say yes, that's it. It will never ask you again. Let's say that there is such dynamic areas on the page, and now you change the page. As a result, the entire, added something at the header, everything dropped down. The system will detect that and tell you, hey, again, it doesn't know if it's a bug or not, if it's intentional or not, but it can tell you, I noticed that the page structure changed. Do you want me to adjust all these areas that you said it should be ignored to those new locations that they're supposed to be at? Again, everything is with computer vision, completely untied with the implementation, no matter if it's web, mobile, PDF, just a picture that you took with your camera. It doesn't matter, it works just like a human can understand and figure out that that's what's happened, right? More than that, let's say that something changed on the page and things shifted, and because of that, if you just look at the pages side by side, there are a lot of changes there. Basically, everything moved, right? But the system can then detect beyond that if you ignore those movements, you still see content changes. Maybe there's a typo. Okay, maybe there's a typo in some word, in some button that moved. It's already flagged as a difference because of the movement, but there is yet another layer of difference there. It will basically automatically let you know, hey, maybe you would like to ignore differences here. I see some context changes. And if you say yes, voila, it goes away. You can just focus on what changed. So these are just a few examples of the cool things that we added around the automated maintenance that really go a long way. We're really, proud and, excited about.
It sounds exciting. Adam, unfortunately, we're so far over time. I apologize. We've got to wrap up. Just want to make sure the release is available now.
Yeah, it is available from today.
People can go to appletools.com to find out more. Listen, I'd love to have you come back on. We'll schedule more time next time, and we'll dive into some of these things. We'll dive into some of these things around testing. We're doing an every other week show called DevOps Unbound that's going to focus a lot on testing with a lot of thought leaders in testing. I'd love to have you join us for an episode soon too. We'll reach out. But for now, congratulations on the release. Congratulations to everyone at Applet Tools on the success. We wish you more success, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you. This is Alan Schimmel. We're on TechStrong TV. Adam Carmi, co-founder, CTO, Applet Tools. We'll be back with our next guest in a minute.
Elsa, you're all over the place.
How am I supposed to do anything when she's over here just doing her own thing?
Okay, well, maybe if Dan played more than just one string, we'd all be more on the same page.
Are you out of your mind? Okay, I do the E string. That's my job.
Isn't there an easier way to do this?
I
There
wish.
has to be.
I literally
I
just
don't
suggested
know.
something.
Right?
Nobody ever listens
Oh,
to me, though,
It's
so...
ridiculous every time.
When your team's not on the same page, things can get weird, fast. Don't make your DevOps team live like this.
El tutto tu tempo es finito, Dan!
See? It's like we're not speaking the same language. I'm out.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle, making sure your teams are all on the same page.
Do you know how to play the E string?
I can learn.
Our next interview features a new player in the cloud-native container security space. It's called Kubernetes. Now, there are already more than several players in this space, but Kubernetes is different. Mike Hogan, their CEO, co-founder, is going to tell us why. Mike is a serial entrepreneur, and the group, the whole founding group behind Kubernetes actually, are serial entrepreneurs who've had some success, and they think, they see a real problem here that needs to be filled with Kubernetes, and he's going to tell us what it is and why Kubernetes is different. So here's Mike Hogan, CEO, Kubernetes.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. We're back on TechStrong TV. We've got a nice segment lined up for you right now. I'm glad to introduce you to Mike Hogan of Kubernetes. Hey Mike, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hello, Alan. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So Mike, I'll be honest, I don't think we've highlighted or covered Kubernetes before, either on TechStrong TV or any of our media sites. So I guess the right place to start is, fill our audience in. What's Kubernetes about and what do you do there?
Okay. So I am the CEO of Kubernetes, CEO, co-founder. And so the reason you haven't heard about us yet is we're just launching. So we'll be actually launching this Wednesday. And what we do is container security analysis. And where we really differentiate ourselves is by coming out with a comprehensive solution where we address all aspects of that container security on the shift left. So we focus on the development pipeline before it gets into Kubernetes. And we look at those containers and we analyze them for 6 different things. So we look at your open source components. We look at software composition. We look at the license types. We also look at the configuration of the container, the secrets, the vulnerability of your own code, as well as the your own code and the OS packages, of course, as well as malware. So the whole idea is to bring all of that together and then make that available as a service. And so that is kind of what appeals to the developers, is that they get everything at once as a service, don't have to mess with it. And then we also sell to the security folks, because with this whole kind of shift left thing and microservices, and now with COVID, people working from home, you need a way to apply that security. And the way you do that is with policy across that runs automatically. So we bring those two pieces together.
I love it. I love it. So first of all, I should mention for our audience, we are taping this. It's not streaming live. And Mike, when you say Wednesday, you're referring to July 22nd? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So people will be watching this, I believe, next Monday or Tuesday. And therefore, Kubernetes, we're back to the future. It's already out. 6.7 gigawatts will do that for you. But so you guys can go check out Kubernetes right now and see for yourself. Mike, this is an interesting mix of security for a containerized environment, and certainly we've seen multiple quote unquote container security companies come to market. Some have already been acquired, Twistlock with Palo Alto and stuff, but a lot of them, as I think you've mentioned, didn't have the whole package, right? Of the they've done pieces of what you're talking about, but you'd wind up having to cobble together 2 or 3 companies or 2 or 3 tools to do it in a comprehensive way. A couple of things kind of pop up, though. So you mentioned the whole shift left thing and being able to do this, almost pre-deployment, if you will. So where on my software development lifecycle, where in the pipeline does Kubernetes sit that it's able to, perform this task?
Yeah. So there are a lot of ways that you can work with us. One in the pipeline is that we have integration into Jenkins, for example. So you can automate this in your CI/CD pipeline. So it just automatically pushes. All of your containers are evaluated and basically approved before they can be shipped, moved into the production or test or whatever environment you're kind of staging them into. So it's really sort of a cloud service that is offered to distributed development, and then gives the security kind of overview for governance and compliance.
Yep. Now, the next question is, look, you can't be talking about containers without talking about Kubernetes, service mesh, or that kind of stuff. Where does Kubernetes fit into that architecture, this new stack, if you will?
Yeah, so we are on the left side, on the development side, kind of the pipeline into Kubernetes. And so when you think of a complete solution for your container's full life cycle, then you would have solutions on the runtime side that might be like a StackRox and some of the other runtime solutions. We're a development security solution, so you can think of them as very complementary. Putting together a complete solution.
So you are to the left. You're purely pre-deployment at this point, if you will. So you don't get involved in that orchestration or what have you. Now, so you integrate, you mentioned with Jenkins. What about some of the other CI/CD tools out there?
So we're brand new. We're starting with Jenkins because that has about 80% of the market, but we will be adding others as well. We also have our own REST API, so anyone can integrate. And then we have other integrations. So we've done Jira integration, we've done Slack, we've done a few others. But on the CI/CD, we figured by getting 80% of the market, we've got a pretty good chunk of it. And then we'll be adding to that as we move forward.
Great. Now, software composition, open source licensing. Sounds a little black duck synoptics, that kind of thing. So you do that. Then we have vulnerability scanning, if you will. of the code itself.
Yep.
Right. That's 3. Then the fourth thing you're looking at is the integrity of the container, if you will.
So we look at the configuration because you don't want your containers going in with root access privilege, things like that. You also want to have scaling constraints, memory constraints, so they're not running wild. And increasingly, what you're getting is with the Kubernetes as a service, like a Fargate or a Cloud Run, they've tightened things down. So they have a certain config profile that you have to fit in order to run in their system. So that's one of the things that we look at. Right now, we look at the config, but pretty soon, I think you'll see us be doing sort of a Fargate ready or Cloud Run ready, where we're looking at the config and comparing it to their constraints. But yeah, that config is one of the 6 things that we do.
Excellent. And I think you mentioned the product's offered as a service, so a SaaS service.
Correct.
And is there a free version or a community version, or
so what we're doing? What we're doing upon launch, and this may evolve, but we're giving the ability to sort of a try before you buy, evaluate 200 containers for free. To basically to bring the developers in so that they can get an experience of how easy this is. And how quick and all of that. So, and one of the ways that we really differentiate, there's a number of ways, but one of them is that we actually run cloud native. So we're running in Kubernetes. So while we have 6 different analyzers that are looking at different aspects of that code or the container or the packages, they're all running independently. And so all of that improves performance, but even better, we take those 6, and let's say you have 100 containers coming in, we'll create 600 pods and run all 6 of those simultaneously against all of your containers all at once. So you don't get this sort of sequential sort of, wait an hour or 2 to get everything evaluated.
Very cool. And so, look, I mean, unfortunately with COVID, otherwise I'd say we'd see you at KubeCon. KubeCon was, even the rescheduled one was supposed to be next month in Amsterdam. That, of course, is going virtual. The one for the fall will probably be virtual as well in November. But how are you getting the word out with this right now, Mike?
So we're talking to influential folks like you. So we've done the analyst shuffle, and we're still kind of finishing up with that. And the response there has been great. We're doing some press work now. We're launching on Wednesday, and then our go-to-market is through the AWS Marketplace. So you can go in, you can try it out. If you like it, you can upgrade. We're sort of taking a land and expand approach where we get the developers using it for free. Then we go to the security folks and say, hey, we can give you all these tools that can give you that compliance and governance over all of this distributed data. And of course, with COVID, people working from home, it's even worse because the security guys and the dev guys can't talk around the water cooler.
Yep, it is. Though, look, with tools like Slack and stuff like that, I mean, the communication it's not in person, but it can be constant on Slack to a certain degree. Mike, what about funding on Carbonetti? Have you announced funding or no?
We have not. So we have the advantage of the fact that we've been successful entrepreneurs in the past. So I've created 4 companies, 3 were acquired. I was part of a team that took a company public. So we have largely funded it ourselves. We did a friends and family, a micro round. And we also brought in we allowed some of our advisors. So we have some really top-notch advisors. And so we allowed them to invest, but it hasn't been for need of money. So at this point, we've got enough cash in the bank for I think, a year. But, worst case scenario, I'll just write checks.
Yep. So if you can you name some names on the advisors or the companies you've been involved in?
Sure. So I was part of a team that took Poet, which is an object database company, public, and then they acquired Versant, and that has evolved since I left. But I've with the team that we started here, the three core folks, myself, Rod Paulino, who does the marketing side, Chief Marketing Officer, and John, who's our CTO. The three of us built a company previously that was doing local online coupons, and that one was acquired by Microsoft a while back.
Good for you guys.
Yeah, so we've done a few things, and we've done. You don't see us in a particular industry. We've done a lot of cool stuff. So across the board.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but in terms of our advisors, like Anthony Bettini wrote the first scanner for containers, which was called FlawCheck. That was acquired by Tenable.
Yeah.
And he's now CTO over at White Hat.
Yeah, I know.
We've got Mike Viscuso, founder of Carbon Black. Brendan Hogan, Tom Barcy at VMware. Jeremy Carlson, who's at Kaspersky. So we've got kind of a pretty solid brain trust of established, experts in their respective fields.
Excellent, man. It sounds exciting. First of all, I mean, it is a market ripe. I have about 25, 30 years of venture-backed startup experience myself, and one of my mentors, a lot of the companies that I helped found were funded by my friend Brad Feld. And Brad was with SoftBank Venture Capital, then Mobius. He was the managing partner, then founded Foundry Group, VC, Techstars, a bunch of other stuff. And Brad always used to tell us, if you're not going to be in the top three in the market, get the hell out, right? And so here you've got a market where, as I mentioned, you've got big companies like Palo Alto in there, but you also have some very well-funded startups, Aqua Security. You mentioned StackRox. I mean, it's not that they've raised a lot of money, but they have some really blue chip investors. I want to say Kleiner Perkins or one of those kind of Sequoia's StackRox, right?
Yep.
But also, as you mentioned, they sit a little further right than you in terms of the continuum, if you will, and so it'll be interesting to see in there. My 2 cents, and it really is 2 cents, not a nickel, is there's so much going on in the CI/CD space right now. A lot of people say, yes, Jenkins was the 800-pound gorilla. But the fact of the matter is it's a lot of people think it's sort of end-of-lifing. And you've got Jenkins X, and you've got what was Zibia and is now Digital AI, and Circle CI, and the Jira one, and Harness is another one, and the folks doing the Spinnaker thing. There's probably about a dozen good CI/CD players now vying. GitLab, I don't know, GitHub, Microsoft's GitHub, yet another one. And so I think to be successful in your spot, you're going to need, and you already know this, I'm sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jenkins is a great place to start. And now you gotta build out for the rest of these. Very cool. I'm being signaled that we're running out of time here. I apologize. Mike, you know what? We didn't mention the website.
www.carboneddies.com. So it's basically carbon and eddies.
So it's CARBON and then ETTIS?
ETES.
ETES. So Carbon Eddies, ETES.com.
Yep.
Excellent. Go check it out. you know, a lot of our audience between Container Journal and DevOps.com and Security Boulevard, kind of this is the nexus point for the three of them, right? Container security and cloud native security. So this is in the sweet spot there. I wish you a lot of success, Mike. Keep us posted. Come back on.
Will do. Thank you very much.
All right. Mike Hogan with a new company just launched, Carbonettes Container Security, with a shift left spin to it for your CI/CD pipeline. Check them out. This is Alan Schimmel at TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with our next guest. Our something old today comes again, as usual for me anyway, for TechStrong Con, which is now almost 2 months in our rearview mirror. We're going to start planning the next one. Stay tuned for news. However, our next video is Pavlo Baran. Pavlo is the CTO at Instana. And speaking about observability, which seems to be the theme today, there's a bit of a theme here. Pavlo talks about observability and applying it at scale to the enterprise. This is the presentation he did at TechStrong Con. I think it was great, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Here's Pavlo Baran of Instana.
Hello, everybody. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Pavlo Baran. I'm founder and CTO of a company called Instana. We are building a APM solution / observability solution / monitoring solution for specifically modern architectures for Kubernetes and container-based workloads. And what I'm going to talk about today is how to apply observability in the enterprise at scale. You probably have heard about the topic of observability. There are specific challenges in the enterprise and also the necessity to apply the whole topic. And I will explain, hopefully understandably, how to do it, why to do it, and where to pay attention. Okay. So there's a few changes in the modern enterprise that need to be taken into consideration when speaking about observability specifically. So first of all, every modern enterprise IT is kind of forced to think and work like a startup. What does that mean? It means that you kind of need to establish a few garages to verify ideas quickly, to get early feedback from your customers, and to learn how to deliver fast, how to move fast, how to once the test of the idea doesn't work, you kind of pivot into something different. So effectively speed up all the things and then relax all the things, not write things in stone for too long. Well, on the other side, there is pretty much not a single business in the world anymore that is free of competition. If it's not competitor of your size, like the big enterprise versus a big enterprise, then it is a whole bunch of little startups who is going into your direction. So you need to serve them, and this means that you need to follow the path that somebody else defines for you to work in your market. Well, there's not only challenges, there's also changes that happen to the modern enterprise IT. Sorry. One of them, well, or a whole block of them, is effectively around variety and the lack of visibility. What I mean by that is that a classic enterprise, of course, is expected to have a whole zoo of solutions that have been created at different times. Some of them are maintained, some of them are less maintained. Most of them pretty much are still in place, and a classic enterprise IT architecture wallpaper is pretty big. You can wrap around this poster, you can wrap around a room wall, like all the walls in the room with them. I've seen this all. And on the other side, having all this introduces a huge challenge on visibility, how to understand the states of the particular things in this whole wallpaper, how to understand their relationships between them, how to understand who impacts what and how. All these different solutions created at different times by different people, by generations of people probably. It is a huge challenge to the IT and also introducing everything new, as I said, with the changes that are happening, contributes and piles up on top of it continuously. On the other side, I mean, if you're in a big enterprise, you already are drowning in data, I mean, for years. And everything that changes market-wise right now, and from the perspective of the user behavior, from impatient users, all of the expectations they have on mobile applications, et cetera, it introduces way more data. Now you're already overloaded, so you don't want to add on top of this overload. What you want to focus on is useful, reasonable information instead of really raw data. It's really enough. What makes an enterprise as compared to a company that just started, it's not really about the size per se. What it comes with are responsibilities, and those can come from compliances that you need to be compliant with all different expectations, regulations in different countries. This is kind of, I mean, this is due to the fact that you exist for so long and have explored different markets already. On the other side, what you want to do in the enterprise, of course, is establish standards that people kind of follow the same best practices, same procedures. You don't want everybody to reinvent the wheel all the time because it's very, very costly. It cannot be really properly controlled. The effort cannot be minimized, and also onboarding new people in a large setting is very, very complex if you don't follow any kind of blueprints. So enterprises are all about standardizing procedures, the way of work. It doesn't matter how agile, not agile whatsoever. It is all about having commonalities among the whole large company and following compliance and regulations. What is a very difficult topic? First of all, budgets. I mean, there is a growing need. Well, not really need. Let me put it that way. An enterprise would write their budget in stone for a year, maybe for 2, maybe for 3. The reasons for that is predictability. The reasons for that is the responsibility and necessity to report about budget consumption and plan the budgets for the next years beforehand. It is a pretty complex topic. It comes also with the size and with a number of users in the overall systems. But what also is interesting is that on the other side, the new world, the modern world, is pushing consumption-based, usage-based scenarios and payment on an enterprise, which is a big challenge because on one side you want to be predictable, on the other side you get this consumption-based model. They are absolutely not compatible. So effectively you end up calculating up without the ability to move too much inside of something that you call budget, even if it's derived from consumption-based model. On the other side, in a large company, in a large enterprise, there's a lot of different costs that are hiding. I mean, they start with something that you couldn't predict and is not part of the budget. Especially, it is very possible in anything that is consumption-based. On the other side, hidden costs can be cost of opportunity, as an example. Your people are doing something while not doing something else. So effectively what happens is that as an example from the industry where I'm working in, when people are busy monitoring, they're not contributing to the core business value. So they are not doing what they're supposed to do, and you lose probably the ability to target the market the more people are busy with things that are kind of secondary. And so on and so forth. It is a difficult topic. It is a real big challenge in the enterprise, and it needs to be addressed no matter by what kind of a solution. Another aspect in a classic enterprise or in a modern enterprise, IT, whatever, is of course that you cannot rewrite everything today that you have been running for years. The reasons for that are different. First of all, IT systems that have been working for years and still can be supported and maintained, there is no reason to replace them unless they are not satisfying the needs. But just replacing for the sake of the replacement for sure is not happening, because you want, you kind of need to ensure that your investment still survives because otherwise you would be multiplying this. This is not responsible. So enterprises deal with a lot of legacy, and everything that, of course we know it, everything that you write today is already legacy tomorrow, which means that it piles up. And the more systems you need to implement, the more systems you need to integrate, the more, let's call it legacy stuff, is being accumulated on the way. And the more you need to take into account different generations of different software systems. And of course, people are a big challenge. I mean, as opposed to a startup that where people could be expected to work who are more entrepreneurial, even if they are employed, they are more, you know, like into this adventure and risks. But there's a lot of people who are working in classic enterprises that are not like this. They're still, they can be real, have high levels of expertise. They're just a different kind of human being. It is a challenge to, well, to kind of help them work in a sense that is how it's expected to work in this modern world, to move fast, to deliver fast, to break things fast, start up-ish, and also kind of introduce measurability that startups come up with, anything from OKRs, etc. You name them all. It is a challenge in a enterprise setting, per se. We spoke about changes, we spoke about challenges, but it's not only this. There's a lot of positive upside things, and the opportunities that come with the modern world for enterprise IT are, specifically for the topic I'm talking about today, are the following. You can set yourself up as a big enterprise for fast delivery and continuous delivery, which is very, very, very core to moving fast and then you know, testing hypotheses very fast, and then changing target markets and satisfying users more and more and more. Since everything is moving fast, you need to be delivering fast and also continuously. And you totally can. There is some prerequisites that, of course, you need to fulfill as an enterprise, but it is a big opportunity, and nobody should be missing out here. Another aspect is that helps people to achieve their goals the best way possible, while still being that kind of human being who's more into, you know, safety, long-term planning, people who are normally working in enterprise settings. You need, or you want to democratize the information for them. There's a chance to collect everybody in the organization around same abstractions, same domains, same kinds of information. Instead of really letting them work completely independently, you can achieve an agreement based on useful information that is democratic for everybody, and everybody can make their own contribution depending on their own skill sets, but there is kind of a baseline that is common for everybody. And it's a huge change, because you make people productive through this way while giving them fun to work. And of course, we see this especially in the current situation, that going digital is literally not an option. And not going, digital is not an option. I mean, of course, there is industries, etc., where you kind of need to do physical work, definitely, but as much as you can needs to go digital instead of kind of, you know, processes that are still manual, not supported by software. And it is a big chance for everybody, in especially for enterprises right now, because they have a market, they are positioned very well, they just need to move. The more they adopt to the digital world, the higher the chance for them not only to survive, but also to ensure continuity of the business. Now, going back to the observability as such, I want to first look into what is not observability. Well, actually, no. First, the definition, the classic definition of observability. It's being a measure of how well the internal state of a system can be inferred from its outputs. So effectively, it's about turning a black box into a white box so you can look inside, or you can look at this thing from outside, and whatever it tells you, you can understand and also can infer how well it does. It's like doctor, analyzing your body in order to figure out what kind of sickness you might have, or maybe you're just healthy. So what is not observability? It's a whole bunch of things, of course, because I've heard many of them spoken out by different people in enterprises. So let's briefly go through them. So observability is not the same thing as classic monitoring. I mean, monitoring is effectively pretty passive mechanism. Of course, you can make it very intellectual, but it is not the same thing as observability, and we will discuss briefly why not. It's also not just for startups. As I said, everybody needs to think and work startup-ish these days, including the enterprises. So it's not just for these cool boys. It is also for you. It's not a piece of tech, so we cannot say that observability is this tool. That's not it, definitely. It's also not a standard. I mean, there is some growing standards how to make things observable that help, like Open Telemetry, which is a growing community and a growing set of best practices and effectively code and frameworks and integrations that allow you to make your systems that you implement right now observable. But it doesn't mean that this is the only standard. There can be so much expected in the next years because observability is becoming more and more important. It's also effectively not only for new stuff. You can actually make any kind of system observable. There is different means how you can do it. So it doesn't mean that your legacy systems cannot be made observable or are not observable in the sense of observability already. Also, it's not a buzzword. It's really happening. It's a movement. There is a huge support in the community and in companies of different sizes to ensure that there is a common understanding how to make systems observable for everybody to benefit from. And probably the wrongest of all things that you could say is that it's not required, it's optional. I mean, first of all, observability as a topic is not new. It is just with the way we change the way of work, with the way we change how we deliver software, how we write software, the necessity to make this whole system with its little pieces, different workloads, observable is more important than ever. So it is just coming back, and it is getting traction. It is just becoming mainstream. So it is required and it's not optional. So what does observability mean actually for you as an IT enterprise, as an enterprise IT? It's, first of all, it is a design approach. It is included in the way how you design your software if you really want to make it observable. It's the same kind of orthogonal cross-cutting concern, like what you would say about logging in general, like old school logging, or if you would think of security as a cross-cutting concern. Anything around this that is typical for enterprise architectures comes into play with observability as well. You need to design for it if you want to do it proper, or there's other tools that will do it for you, but you still need to take into consideration that something needs to be done there, and it is part of the design that you're doing. It is also a set of best practices. As I said, it is not really a standard. It is a set of best practices. There is a suggestion to work with pillars like logging, like tracing, like metrics that propose to you how you can make your systems observable. You can come up with whatever you want if it is still ensured that your software system you can understand how it feels while it is in production without changing it. That's very important. Then your system is observable, no matter what tools you use. But there is a whole lot of recommendations how to use it. It is also a growing ecosystem of solutions and tools. You cannot really say that there is the tool for observability. I mean, it's going to be always like it was the case with monitoring, it will always be a combination of different approaches and different tools. But the ecosystem is growing here, especially around the standards like OpenTelemetry, where effectively everybody can agree on a common set of, well, expected functionality, expected data sources, expected use cases. It is also an enabler for the modern way of work. If your systems are continuously observable, you can deliver and break as fast as you want, as fast as you desire, as fast as your internal processes allow you to do. Also, from the enterprise perspective, as I already said, it will give you a competitive advantage because understanding the health and the performance of the system while it is running in production and serving real users without any modification continuously at any time is better than what your competition is doing. So it makes you really flexible and fast. And of course, what it means, as I said, it is happening. It is already a fact. Observability is not only coming, it is there. Framework vendors are enriching their own code with instrumentation step by step. So you get instrumentation points to look into and to understand how it feels. And you should be contributing from your side, no matter if you do this by hand or if you do it automatically. I will have some ideas a few slides later. So how can observability as such help enterprise IT? Of course, you need to do it right. It's easier said than it's done, but and probably everybody will claim this, but let's look at the few arguments here. So first of all, observability gives you visibility. Visibility is a real pain in any enterprise. Visibility into everything, including running software. We're not speaking about processes and whatsoever. We're speaking exclusively about software systems. This is complex enough, and the visibility challenge is properly addressed by the ecosystem that is built around observability. It's also about control. When you move fast, when you break things, when you collect information, test ideas, etc., there's always a feeling that you're moving too fast. Things are getting out of control. So making systems observable gives you the feeling of gaining this control back again, no matter what level of control you feel like having right now in your enterprise IT, but observability clearly allows you to have this feeling. It is also, if you have a high level of automation, that's very important in the enterprise especially, but also anywhere in the IT. Of course, I don't need to teach anybody here that automation is king. The more you automate, the less human error you're calculating into the whole system. And especially when you move fast, every kind of human error that can happen and will happen will hurt you 100 times. You probably didn't test well enough. You didn't give yourself too much time. You just went out with an MVP. You're trying to solve a real problem with a minimal possible solution. Things will break. They will be continuously broken. The less human error is introduced into this overall system, the more automated it is, the more comfortable it is, the better the result. As I said, testing hypothesis is also very important, but it needs to be done continuously as you go. So you can put little increments and little pivots here and there to verify what works best. And of course, any enterprise can do this as well. It's also about delivering fast, of course, but it's, of course, when you deliver fast, you want fast feedback. You want to be in a continuous loop of getting feedback about, did you break anything when you delivered this 20th deployment like today, right? I mean, probably it's extreme, but you get the point. Instead of delivering every 6 months, you will increase the speed, work in increments, and of course, you need continuous feedback about this. And observability gives you the foundation for that. When the systems are observable, you get continuous feedback because you can look inside. It's also for fast technology adoption. You can verify new versions real quick. You can adopt to new versions of software real quick. Everything is moving so fast around technology these days. And if you want to adjust to this pace, having systems observable and also, respecting the observability points of the systems that you're using, taking them into consideration, is it will allow you to, to have a feeling of, well, safety, let's say safety net, right? End-to-end monitoring, it is, you want to know how the system performs from the perspective of the user, of course. But it's not just saying, okay, it's slow for the user or not slow for the user. What observability will tell you, it will, if it's done properly, it will give you the explanation why it is slow. So you can really react fast on it. It's not enough to know that something is not working from the perspective of a user in some particular country, right? You want a clear understanding why and how to fix it. So you kind of need a connection between this user perspective and what's happening in your systems. So you want to extract stable semantics, right? And then the abstractions like applications, etc., that will be stable in the same way tomorrow like they are today. It doesn't matter what kind of infrastructure they're built on. So you still can follow the path of the user through this stable thing, and to understand in regards to, like, I don't know, application payment, that the application payment is slow for users, no matter if it's deployed as a classic 3-tier application or if it's running on containers or cloud functions whatsoever. It is important that you understand this really quick end-to-end and infer how to fix it. And also, you don't want to sample data, because the thing is that outliers matter. The faster you move, the higher the chance that the baseline is going to be kind of stable. If you wipe out single outliers, you will probably miss the points that are important to you. You cannot really base your inference on just a baseline over some period of time. You will have different trends, seasonality aspects, etc., etc. And also, it's not necessary if it's solved properly for you. It's not necessary to miss the outliers, and you don't want to wipe them out by yourself prematurely. Which brings me to the topic how to apply this whole story to the enterprise at scale. So, there can be different journeys how you can approach this. It's all in your hand. You just need to do it. Here's my personal idea how to best do it. First of all, you cannot really focus on making systems observable that are 20 years old and are caught in kind of slow processes whatsoever. You should try this where you try new approaches, try new ways of work, where you, let's say you have some DevOps initiative in your company. This is the territory where you want to go also with the observability. It will yield the results that will be combined with the way of work, combined with the way to deliver the software, and can be projected afterwards onto your legacy system. So in order not to lose, the momentum there, you should be going after a lighthouse project that is kind of in the garage somewhere. In the observability, it's all about instrumentation. Effectively, you have code, and you need to put somehow instruments into this code that you can look into this at runtime and infer how well it feels, right? So you need to instrument wisely. So I think that an enterprise should be generally striving for a lot of automation, and the reasons for that I think I explained a few slides ago. But also from the perspective of moving fast, right? If the system, if your observability system, your observability tool gives you the ability to automatically instrument glue code, boilerplate, whatever, that you shouldn't be instrumenting by hand, so why not take it, right? So as an example, of course, I'm speaking of something that I represent and I've built from the beginning with our team. In our own product, we have a draconic level of automation because we truly believe that you should not be doing the work that another software system can do for you. As I said, you should not be prematurely sampling, especially in the beginning when you don't know. I mean, you start off with either a new system or some kind of an existing system that is still not observed. Maybe it's not even observable. So you need to learn, and you cannot decide from the beginning how much data you want to wipe out before it will start making sense to you or stop making sense to you, right? So you should be collecting and processing all of this data that is collected on observability endpoints and then make the later decision, right? So don't sample prematurely. As I said, since specifically enterprises are drowning in data already, they should move quick from data to information based on some semantics. By semantics, I mean not only stable abstractions, like for example, an application, that is, by the way, in the next bullet point here. Let's say you have an application, it's called payment, and this application can run on different infrastructure. You can even have 3 or 4 different implementations of that thing. From the perspective of the user, it is still the same application. And you want to also connect these little things like one application, or maybe service is a bad example. So how services are interconnected. Semantically understand kind of how a system is built, what depends on what can break what, etc. So this level of information, and also already come with suggestions how to fix things. So not really beginning at zero in understanding everything based on raw data. So this is what you should be striving for, information layer that is built on top of raw data that you probably should not be even looking into because it's going to be too much, it's too low level. Stable abstractions are also pretty good to organize people around domains and different perspectives. So perspectives are where different actors, different players have different views on the thing, but domain should not be optional. If you speak of payment should be the same for everybody. Everybody should have the same understanding of what this thing means, what is it built of, and what happens if it breaks. Is this business critical? Is this not business critical? Shall I get up at 2 a.m. in the morning to fix this, or can I fix this thing later in the day? You cannot do this on raw data, because you will expect that everybody in your team has the same view based on raw data, and of course they will have all different views if they don't work with stable abstractions. Simplification and automation of the feedback and root cause analysis is extremely important. Your observability solution, no matter how it is built, should give you suggestions how to fix, how to get from A to B real fast. Because if it's complex, if it's big, if it's diverse, you don't really have the ability and time to give it all a meaning. When you're trying to figure out a solution for a problem, everything that can be explained beforehand should be explained to you beforehand. So you can really focus on figuring out how to fix this in your particular environment, right? But you know, just seeing a CPU load average that is kind of misbehaving from your perspective is not enough to infer that a business critical service is broken and is impacting. So any kind of shortcut that you can take from A to B during your root cause analysis is extremely important. What is also important in the enterprise, of course, is that people should not be reinventing the wheels. I said this already. The risk when they work with low-level observability data is that everybody will define their own, observations, solutions, monitoring solutions, whatsoever. It is important that you have an agreement how to work with this observability data. And of course, abstractions will help you here. But also, you should not be allowing everybody to alert themselves. Generally, alerting is a very complex topic, and it should be considered team-wise. So you need to alert smartly. A smart alert means that it should be first of all shared among team members. A team, for example, that is responsible for a particular application should be responsible for this in the sense that it is seeing the same things, it agrees that the same things are important, and of course they will be alerted on the same things. So if one team member is alerting themselves based on CPU load and the other one based on some network traffic parameters whatsoever, they are not in agreement and they are redefining observability effectively for themselves. And of course, they will ensure that their own data endpoints for observability are in there, which clutters the whole thing. So that's why I said that it's important to make this decision early in the design phase. A uniform view on legacy and modern technology stacks, as I already said, when you have a stable abstraction called payment, an application called payment, it shouldn't care what it runs on. Does it run on Kubernetes? Does it run on some cloud in your own data center, whatsoever? It simply does not matter. When you work with this stable thing, this is what you need to be observing. You need to be observing the health of an application. Of course, you should be also looking into the health of infrastructure components and whatsoever, but at the end of the day, this is not what the customer sees. The customer doesn't really care what kind of infrastructure you have. They care about the payment application, if I'm allowed to keep this example here. And last but not least, hidden costs are deadly. They can happen in licensing, as I said. They can happen in when you pay as you go, you don't make it predictable for yourself. You should be able to do this better. But also all kind of manual efforts where people are busy with stuff they shouldn't be doing or are not doing the stuff they should be doing, but instead are defining observability, reinventing the wheels, and doing all this by hand. It is very costly, and if you should after observability, you should not do any of this. You need to make the decisions to automate the maximum beforehand, before you even start the journey. Once you have all this in place, and it's actually pretty easy to do, you just need to pick the right approaches for yourself, but also, I hope I'm allowed to say that you should be wisely looking into tools like ours, for example. I think that observability will work just fine in the enterprise and will create a foundation for further development, further transitions, any kind of transformations, going digital, rewriting software, enjoying a fast delivery and continuous delivery. So everything I spoke about, our recommendations, can be found on our own webpage, and you can run our software for free to check out how it works, how we see the world of observability, how we see the world of monitoring and application performance management. Those are kind of siblings. Just go check out how it works and ask us questions. We are, as I said, very high on automation. We come with a lot of simplifications and shortcuts from the beginning, and you can focus really on stable applications and really measuring what matters in your observability journey. Thank you very much.
Okay, hope you enjoyed Pavlo's presentation from TechStrong Con. As I mentioned, observability is kind of a big buzzword these days, and that was a good presentation on it. Let's now go to see what's news around the MediaOps neighborhoods. You've watched the show before. You know we're going to give you some headlines here from some of the stories appearing on our websites, and we hope you'll go visit the websites and check out the actual articles, as well as there's more articles than there are headlines here. So we'll go from there. Anyway, up on the sites today, though, up on DevOps.com, we have Cassandra update boost recovery speeds. So a new update from Cassandra. We also have how to achieve AWS security in 10 steps. I love those how-to articles. 5 steps, 7 steps, 10 steps to doing something. There's a good article on that. And then, speaking of Pavlo and Instana, we have Instana embraces GitOps. And GitOps is also, like observability, becoming a real movement within the broader DevOps community. So check that article out. Over on Container Journal, we have Startup Launches Container Scanning Service. And I believe that's about our earlier interview we did with Mike Hogan of Kubernetes. And then over on the Boulevard, we have a report that DDoS attacks are now lasting multiple days. So we did a interview on this a couple of weeks ago where the breadth, just the sheer volume of DDoS, some of these DDoS attacks are the biggest we've seen to date in terms of the amount of sustained traffic, the amount of hits, etc. Now they're starting to last more days as well. So what in the whack-a-mole game of cybersecurity, where we thought the DDoS attacks had finally been put to bed, we're seeing new, more dangerous, harder to kill attacks coming, these lasting longer time frames now. So report on that. And then also addressing the security of in-memory computing. I must have written a half a dozen articles on that at Info or Network World back in the day. And it's still a problem. Anyway, so check those articles out. That's what's new up on the neighborhood sites in MediaOps, Container Journal, Security Boulevard, DevOps.com. Check them all out. They're great great stuff there. Now, let's head over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, who has today's interview comes to us from the RSA conference when we were on, back when we used to go to conferences in person, and we were on Broadcast Alley. And Charlene did this interview with WhiteSource.
This is Digital Anarchist at RSA San Francisco 2020.
Hi, this is Charlene O'Hanlon, managing editor over at MediaOps, which produces Security Boulevard, DevOps.com, and Container Journal, as well as DigitalAnarchist.io. We are at the RSA 2020 conference, and as always, having so many great conversations about so many different things related to security, DevSecOps. You name it, we got it. And our next conversation is with Jeffrey Martin, who is the Senior Director of Product at WhiteSource. Jeff, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
It's so great because we do so many webinars together. It's always nice to actually sit face to face. And we won't come to blows over the whole New York, Boston thing. So, I wrote a blog earlier this week about the RSA theme, which is the human element.
Yes.
And in the blog I wrote that that's really open to interpretation because it could mean so many things. It could be, the fact that humans are both the most important part of security and introduce the most vulnerable part of security, and it also could mean the advent of automation in security. And are we automating humans right out of the security process? What's your take on it?
So to me, a lot of it about the human element is how we're utilizing the human element to make businesses transform. So for me, that's the biggest thing in security right now, is how are we transforming our actual business process, which is a human thing. That is a human activity. Computers don't run businesses.
Right.
Yet. Taking those business needs, tying them into our development cycles, how we develop, and essentially why we care about security. And caring is essentially that human element. So when I hear human element, I hear caring, right? That's one thing computers can't do yet, care.
Yeah, well, one of these days they'll get there, but it'll never feel genuine, that's for sure. So.
Right.
But so, when we're talking about DevSecOps then, automation is a huge part of that. So where does that human element come in when we're talking about DevSecOps?
So to me, automation is just a tool to enable humans to be better.
Okay.
It's not a particularly big replacement value there. Sure, maybe it lets you do higher scale, but that's just a different kind of tool, right? The same way a ladder lets you reach higher than how tall you are. Fundamentally, all of our activities in business and software development are human activities. Automation serves us, and I think just in recent years, and that's why I like this human element theme, in recent years we focused so much on what the computers can do. We've sort of lost track a little bit of what the humans can do.
Right.
And realistically, how we can leverage software to enable our human activities like risk assessment. Not necessarily replace them, but just give us more information or extend our reach.
Yes, I agree. I agree 100%. I think that we're never going to be automated out of jobs. I think that the humans are always going to be critical to any process, whether it be a software development process or just nursing or whatever.
Sure.
We're always going to need people. But I wonder if security companies, in their quest to automate and in their quest to kind of make our lives easier, streamline everything, they kind of forget about the fact that humans are the ones who are actually using the technology.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit on it. Humans are always the weakest point.
Right.
You can theoretically at least spend a very large amount of money and make sure everything on the computer side is completely secure. The second you give it to a human, I mean, I think I've seen stats, 60% of all data breaches are human-initiated, inside jobs and things like that. Fundamentally, humans are our weakest link. But they're also the entire reason all the software exists.
Right.
Very little software now is made solely for other software to consume, APIs, et cetera, sure. But for the most part, we're serving some sort of need that a human somewhere has, or we wouldn't be making a product and selling it.
But they make it so difficult to use. I mean, think about like single sign-on is I think it's a great concept, but password manager is also a really great concept. But when you have people whose passwords are ABC123, and then you tell them that they need to be more complicated than that, and they immediately forget their password. It just seems like we're putting up barriers, many barriers as we.
It's funny.
Solutions.
Somebody earlier today, I wish I remembered who, actually said to me, "Good security design starts with good design." If I have too complex of a password piece, and I have to have people jump through a million hoops, and they can never remember their password, and they're always clicking forget password, I'm now less secure because I designed poorly. So designing for actual human use is very fundamental to security. There's other examples in there too, I'm sure, but fundamentally, good design is a foundation of good security. Again, integrations with other products, right? Another common place where you're stitching together two or more components or services or products somehow. Good usability design there prevents bad data injection where somebody's uploading a spreadsheet, right? Pieces like that matter. And I do think we sometimes lose that, where we don't focus on the overall design and how that impacts security. We just sort of tack on security afterwards onto a mediocre or even bad design.
Right. That's an interesting point, and the idea that good security starts with good design. Yes. I really, really like that because, I've noticed that some of the, the best websites ever developed are ones that are like stupid simple, and you don't have to jump through 10 hoops to get to the information that you need. It's there and it's easy to find, and I just think that if the security products that were made for enterprises and keeping the network secure and there go the users secure, that we would have a much more secure environment in general if it just weren't so damn difficult.
If I gave you 10 different configuration files you need to set up to enable a security product,
crazy.
You're going to mess something up and open up a hole.
Yeah.
Almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
So it's even worse if I don't fill all your needs and you need to plug in third-party stuff, right? Suddenly now we have more exposures. The attack surface gets bigger because I'm only meeting part of your needs. So as a product person, that's something I look for is how is my design enabling the usage they need to have so that they don't have to go and find other things to bring in or they have to set up, spend 3 months setting everything up, and of course they mess a few things along the way up.
We should do a webinar on user design
and its impact on security.
And its impact on security. I think it'd be a really fascinating topic.
Interesting, actually, yeah.
Yeah, anyway. All right, we'll talk about it offline. So, Jeff, thanks so much for the conversation.
Hey, no worries.
It's
so
lots
fun.
and lots of fun, as always. Thanks again.
Great, thank you.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops. Happy Tuesday, and I am here now with the Tuesday edition of the webinar previews. This one is a Kubernetes theme, as that seems to be the theme of most of the webinars that we have coming up on DevOps.com this week. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right on into them. Our first one is happening Wednesday, July 29th at 8 a.m. Eastern. It is from Datadog, and it's about its challenges in scaling Kubernetes. And actually, the name of the webinar is Datadog's Journey and Challenges when Scaling Kubernetes. Ara Pulido, who is a technology evangelist at Datadog, will talk through the webinar about Datadog's journey to scale Kubernetes in production, and then some of the challenges they've dealt with from a networking standpoint and how they were able to overcome them. She's also going to do a live demo of the Datadog Kubernetes monitoring capabilities, including the live container view technology. So please check this one out. This is really interesting. If you are having any issues with scaling Kubernetes in your environment, this is definitely one to check out. You might learn a tip or two from what Datadog did. All right, the second webinar is happening Wednesday also, and it is happening at 1 p.m. The name of this one is Image Scanning Best Practices for Containers and Kubernetes. This one is happening, as I said, at 1 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday on DevOps.com. It's sponsored by Sysdig. And during the webinar, the folks from Sysdig will talk about the 5 key steps to adopt in your image scanning workflow in your quest to manage security risk without slowing down your application delivery. This is a nuts and bolts one, so definitely check it out. If application security and speed are your bag, baby, then definitely check this one out. Our last one today is 5 Kubernetes security tools you should use. This one is happening Thursday, July 30th at 11 a.m. Eastern. This one is sponsored by Fairwinds. And as the name implies, Robert Brennan and Joe Pelletier from Fairwinds are going to talk about the top tools for Kubernetes security. And to whet your appetite, the first 3 are Kubernetes ingress policy for DDoS protection, role-based access control, and network policy. So what are the other 2? Well, you'll have to tune into the webinar and find out for yourself. All right, guys, and as I said before, that one is happening Thursday, July 30th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. All right, I hope you are able to log on to DevOps.com to check out these and other webinars that we have, both upcoming and on demand. I'd love to see you online at the webinars, and tune in on Thursday when I will have another edition of the webinar previews. Until then, please stay safe, everybody.
Hey, Charlene, thanks much for the interview, as well as, those webinar previews. Guys, we do 4 to 6 webinars a week at MediaOps, whether they're on DevOps, DevSecOps, cybersecurity, cloud native, digital transformation. They're all decent previews. There's either usually some sort of demo or a really good discussion. We try to make them not too marketing, even though they're sponsored. And you know what? They're the lifeblood of our company in a lot of ways. So please check them out. If there's something you'd like to see on a webinar, write to us, let us know. But for now, thanks for doing the webinar preview, but we have to head over to our analyst corner with Mitch, where Mitchell Ashley has some great commentary and video today. Mitchell, take it away.
Hi, Mitch Ashley, CEO of the Accelerated Strategies Group. Google just announced that they're extending their remote work policy from 2020 to July of 2021, a whole year. This is just the end of July when we're talking about this, of 2020. I think that's a fantastic idea. Frankly, there's so many questions about the workplace. There's so many questions about what's going to happen in different locations and regions and cities and towns. And, are you going to be open to have an office open for people? Do you really want to manage in every city that you have an office for a big company like that? All the variances and policies, whether it's from state, local municipalities, counties, whatever it is. As I think about it, it just seems rather daunting to really come up with a well-managed plan that you're not just going to be spending tons of time on. And who knows, it may all be for naught. If it really goes into an outbreak situation, everybody needs to work remotely anyway. So, my sense of all this, and I'm no smarter about a pandemic than the next person. I'm certainly, no specialist in that area. But when this was all coming down, my sense was, if this is serious, this is not going away. This is going to be with us for a long time, maybe for the rest of my life, for all that I know. Maybe something that never truly goes away, kind of like the flu. Maybe it's something that we do get a vaccine for. Hope so. But even now they're talking about maybe two vaccinations, and we don't know how long the efficacy of those vaccinations would be. How long is that going to be good for? And think of the millions of people just in the United States that would need to be vaccinated in that whole process. I mean, you're extending well out into 2021, assuming we had a vaccine relatively soon, into this year, beginning of next year. So all that means to me is, I think you just need to plan for the future and plan for a different future. We kind of talk about the next normal or the new normal. And that's certainly happening. So in my world, I work remotely. I've been doing that off and on for a number of years. I've worked in an office. It kind of reminds me a little bit in a tangential way. This whole work style and how are we working, I personally went through a shift where we converted an office from pretty old, stodgy, high cubicles, offices on the exterior walls with all the windows. It was really dark in there. I really did not like it. And I've been very familiar working in startup organizations where, one, I had a desk on wheels and I rolled it to wherever I was doing work with whatever team or person that day. So I was used to a very open environment. So we did some things, and it was a fun project to remodel that entire workspace and make it into a more open, collaborative workspace, which now you would say, not so good when there's a chance of catching a virus in that situation. But what that experience let me do was really think through for an entire organization, recreating the work experience. And we did some fun things, like we took our video conferencing system, ripped them out, went with Zoom, but we reused it when we had connected an office in San Jose with the office in Colorado. And that was great. We actually left it on all the time, called the fishbowl, because you could walk up and I remember repair people or technicians coming or projects that I was working on with colleagues, and you'd see them in the fishbowl and talk to each other and be able to converse. And it was kind of a novel thing. I think it wore off after a while, but it was an interesting experiment. My point is, it's time to rethink work. It's time to rethink about going back to what we experienced. Am I saying we're going to work from home and that's going to be the only model of work? Certainly not. But we have to reimagine everything from office space to how we take an airline ride, I think. If this is going to be with us for some time, it's really time to innovate. Let's do something truly innovative. Let's really, now that we know what the constraints are, let's look at the opportunities and how we kind of rebuild that experience. If there's deficit in that connection that we have with people or lack of it because of working remotely, let's find ways of reconnecting, find ways of doing some different things that help people feel connected. Speaking of kind of rethinking how we work, there's a book that's coming out by a local VC within the Denver area, Boulder area, in particular Brad Feld with Foundry Group, somebody that I've known since the early 2000s when he was an investor in a company that I was a part of. And kind of, I'm part of the community here. It's certainly grown to being so big. I don't know anybody anymore. It doesn't seem like I know so many folks. I mean, I still know the people I knew back then, but wow, it's really exploded. But part of that is, Brad and a number of other people really rethought how startups work. And they were innovators in creating Techstars and really creating sort of that next incubator idea, not just co-locating people, but really putting a program together to help accelerators for companies. And Brad's coming out with a new version of a book that he published, I think around 2012 or 13, called Startup Communities. And he's publishing, I don't know if it's a second edition or a new version of that completely, but he's really talking about, will we go back to, one of the things he's talking about in this book, will we go back to startup teams, environments, communities, the way we were doing it pre-pandemic? I think not. He thinks not. And that is, there used to be this view that, if you're not in Silicon Valley, then you're out of the loop. And, that's where it's all really happening. And certainly amazing things have and still are happening, of course, in Silicon Valley. But communities have really come together, even rural startup communities. He uses the model of, when you have 100,000 people, there's, a vibrant opportunity for you to create a real startup community. Think about that in an online sense now. Now that we're working, no matter where we are, I used to call it work anywhere strategy, that we can form relationships with people that we only work with digitally. We may never see them in person. We can form communities and groups in the startup world. So I invite you to check out Brad's book. It comes out on July 28th, which is either on or after this video is going to appear. It's called Startup Communities, Brad Feld. and you can get it on Amazon and probably some other outlets. It's available on Kindle. I know that's one of the options, but would highly recommend it. Certainly a thought leader in many ways. Also check out Venture Deals. He's got some really other great books just to help entrepreneurs understand how do VCs think of the world and how do you engage with financing and VC or teams and people as an entrepreneur, maybe something you never have done before. So that's a great book too. There's a lot of really good content like that that's coming out of the Colorado area and others too. So check those out. My point in bringing that up again is it's time to rethink work. It's time to, if we're spending too much time, all of this extra time working and we're burning out, you know what? As Alan Schimmel did with his team recently, he said, we're taking vacations. We're all taking time off in August. It's a good time for everybody to learn to backfill some positions, but we all want to take some time off and to get some time away. I was fortunate and got to spend some time at a cabin in the mountains, still socially distanced and didn't have to worry about that kind. We were really pretty self-contained other than renting a boat. And even that was well done by the marina. And we're talking about maybe going to McConaughey, Lake McConaughey, big lake in Nebraska, just to spend some time, kind of get out, kind of rethinking how we do vacations. Because obviously Corona and lockdown and businesses not open also, of course, impact that. But maybe some of those things are going to stick with us. Maybe if we're going to be doing a lot more work from home, maybe we need those 3-4 day weekends a lot more frequently. So I encourage you to rethink work. Don't think about just going back to the way it was. We may never go back to the way it really was. We may be some variation of that, but some of us, I think, probably not at all. At least that's my feeling about it. Thanks for listening. Let's rethink work. Let's take advantage of disruption and thinking of ways that we can leverage that and create opportunities, use it to our advantage, and help us all. Thanks for listening.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey, thanks, Mitchell. Well, folks, as I promised you, just a shade over 2 hours today. Hope you've enjoyed the content. Some good stuff here. Many thanks to Phil T., Adam Carmi, Mike Hogan, Pavlo Barron, Jeff Martin, and of course, Mitchell and Charlene. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. Stay safe, stay well, stay strong. TechStrong. We'll be back Thursday.